Hi, everyone. This is Lorna Henri. We're going to wait a couple of minutes and then we'll go ahead and kick off. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Fireside Chat with myself, Lorna Henri. I'm the Vice President of Client Success at Modern Health, and Pat Wadors, who's a Chief Talent Officer at Procore Technologies. We're thrilled to have you with us today. And we will be chatting about mental health in a post-pandemic world. We are, a little bit over a year now of being learning about COVID-19 and being in a worldwide pandemic, a new experience for all of us, and one that none of us would have wished to have, but we have all been in it together. And it's been quite an interesting impact on mental health around the world. And certainly in some countries, we see some glimmers of hope coming out the other side. We have other countries that are going into lockdown for the first time, and it will be something that impacts us certainly for the rest of our lives and for a long time, even as we come out of it. And Pat, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about mental health and mental health practices at Procore.
My pleasure. I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah, great. And a little bit about the format. Pat and I will be speaking for about half an hour. You can please add Q&A to the chat as we go. We'll address a few as we go through, and then we'll have open Q&A at the end of the session as well. So Pat, tell us a little bit about how you've seen mental health evolve in the workplace over the past few decades.
Wow, quite a bit actually. Um, Even a decade ago, I don't think we'd be having this conversation, Lorna. I think that we would talk a lot about the physical benefits, going to the doctor, healthcare, family and self and the deductibles, and we educate our employee and our workforce. We may do professional coaching on skills and presence, but we wouldn't talk about mental health. And it just didn't become mainstream. And I think with the pandemic, one of the silver linings I found in the workspace is the conversation about, living a good life, a healthy life. And that means mentally and physically and having balance and being intentional with how you live. And so something that was taboo and not culturally normalized has now become mainstream. And I hope it continues post pandemic because, like going to the doctor and the dentist, I think we need to make sure that we're caring for our mental health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It truly has become something that people are more comfortable speaking about and addressing and reaching out to each other and making sure people are doing okay. So it's that has been a silver lining from the pandemic. How do you think about employee and life experience and how those things blend together at Procore?
It's super important to acknowledge the whole person in the workplace. Life crashed with work. While we're, majority of professional workers had the opportunity to work from home and or work wherever they could, find their productivity. And what happened this past year is we welcomed so many people into our lives in a more intimate way than we've ever discovered in the past. And so you're seeing others' children and their spouses, and you're seeing people cook and during a meeting and taking care and like, oh, I'll be 5 minutes late. I'm getting my children homeschooled and getting onto Zoom. And more about the human during these unique times that for us at Procore, it really is meaningful. And I know that we didn't all have the skills to work remotely, digitally, full time, and not have that interaction at work. And it caused stress and anxiety. And how do I figure out what productivity looks like? And how do I stay connected? And have a new hire, how do I integrate them and welcome them to our team? And every aspect of what we were used to changed on us, Lorna. And so with Procore, I know we have such a human spirit. Getting that right and leaning into the whole person and their care, their safety, and their mental health was a priority.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I know I listened to one of your podcasts about midway through the pandemic, Pat, and you mentioned that you had invited more people into your home than you ever had in your entire life. And I thought, wait a minute, what? Wait, we're all shelter in place, and I realized that it was through the Zoom. And you just said it's really an aspect of also bringing the whole person to work, and just like normalizing mental health conversations in the workplace, it also normalizes the fact that you have children or spouses or unruly animals or
Yeah.
whatever else might be going on, or crummy internet. And it just really brings home all the things that all of us are dealing with all the time, whether we're trying to perform well at work or well at home, and all of those things coming together. And I thought that was really beautiful. And it made me turn off my false Zoom background, which is actually on right now, but it made me turn it off much more, especially for internal meetings, just to feel more present and more just real for my team when I'm meeting with them. So thank you for that tip.
Ah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Tell me, Pat, I think, as we've all kind of struggled with our own mental health going through this, what are some tips and tricks and some things that helped you personally or that you saw helping your team?
Practicing gratitude. More and more and more, like throughout the day, not just in the morning or at the end of the day. It's being intentional with the gratitude of the small things and the big things, and creating space for myself to breathe. I'm an introvert, and like being on with Zoom all the time is draining. You'd think that as an introvert, I'm behind a screen, I'd be fine, but you're trying to read all the chicklets of people and their body language, and you're trying to be your best self in that moment. And doing that for 8-10 hours a day, whatever the length of your time is draining. And so finding putting control back into my life about my breaks, taking this meeting on a walk my dog around the block, breathe the air, and practice gratitude, because there's so many things I am grateful for, and that just centers my brain and my soul in a healthier way for that next meeting.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. Yeah, the gratitude helps so much. And it reminds me, we have a client success team meeting once a week, and we start off our meeting with 10 minutes of gratitude and just shout outs for other people on the team or in the business or our customers. And sometimes it just feels it's such a lovely way to start the meeting that it's almost like we don't want it to end. We want to have a whole meeting of gratitude. And luckily we have such amazing customers and a team that we could spend the whole hour on that. But it is a really nice reset to the day and the week when we take a few minutes to just appreciate each other.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. What about mental health support and how you think about it at Procore in terms of attracting and retaining talent?
Well, let's talk about retaining first. I think I believe strongly that we must create a employee experience, an employee journey that cares for you in those moments that matter, the big and small moments. And anytime you have uncertainty, a new team, a new job, relocation, you're going to go through some anxiety. You're uncertain about the future, placing bets on what you hope an outcome will be. But, when you're creating those moments, how can you tampen down the anxiety, make it not so spiky, and shorter in duration? Give me more confidence in myself and confidence in the ecosystem that will care for me as I learn new skills and grow in my career. That's super important. And each scenario has its nuances, but part of getting modern health and thinking through care, coaching, and therapy of navigating work-life issues means I can be my best self. I think of it as the oxygen tank in moments of need. I need to care for myself so I can be a great leader for others. That's what this is about. And so each one of those moments has high, medium, or low aspects of need and support. And I'm trying to intentionally design that into the Procorian experience. So when you need me, we're there. And when you need care, I'm not being measured on a service level agreement of time to close a ticket. I'm going to really focus on, did you get the care you need? Did you feel supported? Um, are you on a healthier path?
Yeah, that's great. And we have a question here. How do you hire for that to be a key ingredient in order for a candidate to join your team?
Ah. So I want to create a high performing, healthy company that can scale. And so I put healthy in my mission. And as a candidate, if you know that an organization cares so darn much about its culture and has a growth mindset of improving that culture, and we find something that's wonky, we'll fix it, and something works, we'll just keep expanding upon it. It in itself becomes a talent attraction, right? I want to be part of an organization that cares about me, that continues to improve. And so, how do we tell the stories of your company or of Procore that gets you excited that not only can you do your best work with us, but you can be your best self with us? And that is both an attraction and a retention play.
That's fantastic. And when you talk about being your best self, it's not just your best self at work or your best self at home. It's your best self as a whole person. And who wouldn't be attracted to that? I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. And I love what you said about the anxiety and thinking about how do you tamp that down, and how do you recognize it in yourself even, because I think for all of us, even pre-pandemic, you might find yourself reacting to something because you're not paying attention to emotionally how you're feeling inside, and then you're not responding as your best self. And
Yes.
then having this second layer of unlimited uncertainty. I mean, I love what you said, that uncertainty creates anxiety, and it's we want to control it as human beings. We want an end to the uncertainty, and typically there has been an end. It's like there's a change and it's uncertain and you get through it and it was uncomfortable, but then you get to the other side of it. And I think, we all found ourselves early in the pandemic with tons and tons of uncertainty, no knowledge about what was going to happen, tomorrow or the next day or the next month, and what it was going to look like coming out of it. And the anxiety levels were really high. And one thing that was very interesting for me to understand is that because uncertainty didn't have an end to it, all of our cortisol levels were just running at a much higher level than they normally would. And so things that you might have a little bit of emotional buffer to deal with before, you just wouldn't. And I found myself just reacting to things like, gosh, why, this is kind of nuts. I'm getting mad at my husband, and, angry at, a coworker, that, which, typically I wouldn't. And understanding that, just like that all of us are that, just gave me more empathy for myself, more empathy for others. And also just understanding where that reaction was coming from, and researching some of the things that you can do to bring that cortisol level down, like sleeping enough, exercise. Some of the breathing exercises can naturally bring your cortisol level down. And I found it just helpful to understand and know that.
Yeah, I think you hit on a good point, Lorna. So when you can give employees any bit of choice and clarity of your guiding principles on how you make decisions, that reduces anxiety. So even if we don't know when we're going to open up, but we will give employees at least 3 months notice or 6 months notice, and they have choice on where they work for a period of time until we get more stable. They can plan. They can plan school. They can plan where they live with their community, their family, care for others. So giving them some foresight is really good for anxiety, and just being clear that this uncertainty creates these trigger moments for so many of us. There was a question in the chat about getting your employees engaged in these conversations. I know back last year I had a doctor do a webinar kind of thing about managing stress, what's unhealthy stress and natural healthy stress and anxiety, and how do you read those symptoms, and how do you not only as a manager, see it in others and create space, or in myself and as a leader. Because, when you have those trigger moments, the doctor was talking about breathing, and he made me laugh because he said, try breathing through one nostril really slowly in and out. And it just makes me smile because you cannot help but be present if you're breathing through one nostril. Try
Mm.
it at home. It's safe, but it is threatening. And I'm like, that's a great moment. So when I'm feeling totally out of whack, I do these things, and I'm shameless with them because they make me laugh when I do it. It recognizes my breath as my core. It brings me center. That is what we have to teach each other. And so if you have practical, tangible things we can teach and guide and practice and model, I think employees would feel much better around us too.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great. And when you think about those moments of being reactive, are there points in time you can catch it in yourself or catch yourself just before, and any tips that you have about that?
I can feel my body language when I start getting heated, and I feel the flush coming. And I know it's probably, and I'll ask myself, is this disproportionate to the situation? Because if so, just take a deep breath and say, hit pause on the conversation. I'll be right back. I have to get some water. Whether or not you do it is immaterial. You just need to change your perspective and get better balance. Just give yourself that mental break. The other thing is, if you know it's a stressful time, just tee it up. Like, be completely open with folks. Like, these are stressful times. I'm anxious about getting this right. I want to do good. So if I'm over indexing on something, just call me out on it. If I'm getting too much of a driver, call me out on it. I just want to be gracious. But give me feedback in the moment, because I know I'm with you in this process, but sometimes with my role, it might be overbearing. So giving people permission to help me when I'm over indexing on a reaction is also helpful for me.
Yeah, that's really lovely, Pat. And that's a level of vulnerability that I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with, especially leaders, because you're expected to be perfect and to know everything, or else you wouldn't be in this position. And as I will certainly say for myself, I'm definitely not, and I don't know everything. And I definitely make better decisions with my team and with their input, and to have that back and forth. And I consider it the highest level of trust when somebody, especially a direct report, is able to give me feedback, and I appreciate it so much. So I love that you do the same and ask for it.
I
Oh,
do. There's things that happen in my personal life that impacts how I show up at work, like everyone else. And so if something's, my daughter's struggling, she has special needs, if she has a rough time, or she's emotionally upset about something, that I'm going to carry that emotional charge with me at work. And I just need to breathe and get recentered. But I will come into the office and look, I just been a rough day for XYZ reason. It's me, it's not you, kind of thing. But if it shows up wrong, just let me know, and I'll show up stronger. So I've learned over time that if I don't self-declare some of this as a leader, they'll misinterpret my signals and think it's them. And that's not okay with me.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's great role modeling to even recognize it, because sometimes, we're going about our day and like, I'm grumpy because that guy cut me off. And it's like, actually, you came into this day grumpy,
Yeah.
and maybe you cut that guy off when you were driving down the road. And I think a big piece of it is just starting to recognize it and get in touch a little bit more with what's going on. I know I've been doing a lot more yoga in the pandemic, and our yoga instructor starts out with saying, get out of your head and into your body. And I always thought, what? I know, like I'm in my head all the time. That's the only thing that I even think about is my head. And and it was so like, oh wow, yeah, like I'm clenching my hands or I'm feeling tension in my chest. And like just being aware of that helps you release it.
I got to start taking yoga.
You can join us. We have yoga at 8 a.m. on Wednesdays at Modern Health. So it's been one of the very nice things that Allison, our CEO, has done for us, and so many great ideas from all of the HR leaders that we work with about things that they're implementing in the workplace. I guess maybe you could talk a little bit about why you saw Modern Health as the right partner to tackle some of the themes that we've discussed today.
I think overall, we kind of touched on it a bit. It's the approachability, it's the normalization of asking for help. It's the gentle way in which Modern Health guides and partners with our employees on everyday needs in their lives, be it personal or professional, and helping that employee triage, walk through the right kind of support they may need, right? So it doesn't feel like I am weak. It doesn't feel like I am doing something wrong. It just feels like I'm, taking care of myself. It's a tune up. It's an ask. It's a need. And it's a shifting in perspective. A lot of our employees go to Modern Health for the coaching, right? I'm frustrated. I'm burnt out. I have no control of my calendar. Well, have you thought about these things, these tips and tricks? Have you thought about actually what you do control and you're not controlling your own things? What are you doing? And that self-awareness is a gift to any employee, including myself. And when I feel like I'm getting back into my bad habits, I'm going to give someone a call and say, give me a better perspective. Make sure my blinders are off. Give me some tips and tricks that I can be my best self at. I'll do that all day long.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Austin, I don't know if you want to put the slide up, but I have to do some bragging on Pat's behalf about how amazing their implementation has been of Modern Health. And in the 5 months that we've been working together, we've seen the Procore employee registration at 33% and over 23% actually engaging actively in the platform regularly. And that's against it's against a benchmark of about 20%. So I think it would be great if you could talk a little bit about some of the best practices that you implemented at Procore to really drive that kind of engagement.
Well, it's in the communication, it's in the modeling, it's me and other executives showing the way in which, I have anxiety. I get up in the middle of the night and can't go back to sleep because my mind's like spinning, and I need to get better practices in my life to navigate so I can sleep well, right? Show up well, be healthy, and make sure that many moments of anxiety don't really turn into an anxiety attack. And there's big differences in those things. And what is natural stress that propels you to do your best work versus unhealthy stress that has compounding effects emotionally and physically and impacts your team. And so I think it's role modeling, telling your stories, being vulnerable, making it super easy on your phone device, like in the moment. Like if I'm thinking it, maybe I just click on this. What will I find? Oh my gosh, this plethora of opportunity. And just doing a drum beat. We're here for you. This is what matters. Let's go. Let's be our best selves.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think, Austin, if you go to the next slide, I wanted to share a few things that also, like, aside from the one-on-one care, we also have an enormous amount of digital content that really lends itself to these small micro moments within the day where you can do a quick breathing exercise. Or we launched a reset with our head of clinical care, Dr. Myra Altman, where she has a 6-minute, just, a breathing exercise or a particular cognitive technique that helps drain anxiety or think about values or focus. That's been tremendously helpful and huge, a huge engagement opportunity for people that may say, hey, things are actually doing okay. I'm not ready to do the coaching or the therapy, or I just don't feel like I need it right now. But there's a huge amount in the digital content and self-guided content that they can use.
I love that content because once you self-navigate and explore and find value, you're just going to continue to explore further, right? That's what that engagement level is all about. It's just demystifying it, making it pragmatic, accessible. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. And I think as we start thinking, Pat, about going back to work and what should we start to prepare for in a post-pandemic world, what are some things that you are thinking about or that you foresee that other people might ignore?
Oh gosh, there's a few things I'm thinking about. Where employees moved during COVID, there's been a huge migration of talent to support families, go into communities that you feel supported in. Um, a lot of decisions, life changes. And so employees post COVID, are they going to come back to their core center of where they worked? Are they going to stay digital as an employee? Are they going to blank? So some uncertainty with some of our employees will be there. The other thing is when you do show up back to an office, if that's where your primary work is, the anxiety of leaving that family structure, right? My kids are used to having me around. My dog that I just adopted last year, the first time they'll not have me around. So separation anxiety, those lunches you shared with your children, that run on the beach you had at lunch or the yoga session at 8 will be turned on its head a little bit. So again, you have to go back and own your schedule, own you, and making sure that your path post COVID back into that new norm is something that you feel good about. And my advice to me, because I need to give it to myself, is to have a growth mindset. I'm going to try 2 or 3 times a week in the office, twice at home. How does that calendar look? How long will I stay in the office? Or, you know, what do I do with my anxiety or my travel? Like, I have to be compassionate to me as I go through that. So if I have too much anxiety leaving home, I can pull back. I can figure out my balance over time and not just feel totally a victim. Because I think a victim mindset actually is really hard to navigate. And if you can control anything, even a detail, makes you feel better.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And I love what you said about being compassionate towards yourself going through this experience, this unprecedented experience that we're all going through together. And I'm reminded of something that Myra had said on the reset. And she said, when you have that inner voice, be compassionate with yourself, as it really doesn't help to be critical. It makes it more difficult. And if you are being critical to yourself, think about, would you say that to somebody else? Would you
That's a good,
treat somebody else that way? And the answer is probably not. And we shouldn't treat ourselves that way either.
I would agree. That's wise advice.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Austin, do you want to pull up some of the resources and tools that we have available for everybody attending the webinar?
Yeah, because those circles are really, really awesome.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. So and I saw that there was a question in the chat asking for the slides, and we will make these available to all of the attendees as well as the recording. But a couple of resources that we want to make available to everyone attending is that we have exclusive access to therapist-led circles that are here on this bit.ly link. And there's a couple of examples of the topics that are up live on our website right now, including a number of circles around Black Lives Matter, healing Asian communities, managing political anxiety, a healing circle for the Latinx community, as well as a number of circles for managing work and parenting, as well as just stress and anxiety in general, much less having specifically to do with the pandemic. And the format of these is that they're led, it's therapist led that has a specialty with this topic. And they'll be talking about tools, tips, and techniques for addressing this particular issue. So that's something that people have found tremendously helpful. And I think it also speaks to a bit, Pat, what you were mentioning about just destigmatizing and validating mental health and wellness conversations. Certainly, we found at Modern Health, working with hundreds and hundreds of clients, that having executives be willing to speak about it and the things that they do to take care of their own mental health and wellness really drives a lot of engagement with the platform, and it drives people to be more comfortable speaking about it, which then leads to, a higher performing employee and somebody who feels like can bring their whole self to work. And interestingly, the circles, we've got a lot of feedback that is similar, especially when it's aimed at populations who feel like they're alone, and they feel like the way that they're responding to something, they don't have anyone else to share it with, or they feel like they're an anomaly, and they get into these circles and hear other people talking about similar things. And mostly it's via chat comments. It's the therapist is mainly leading the conversation, but it just makes people feel validated, and we get tremendous comments and feedback from people after the circles.
Yeah, I love the circles. And I think, what I'm grateful for is the agility in working with all of you on these circles. So providing a community, a support network is super, super important. And last year, when we would find that there was a shortage of therapists, right, that looked like me, perhaps, right? And so, depending on your culture, if it's already non-standard to go seek help, and then I don't see anyone that's walking in my shoes in life that won't understand my struggles, it puts up another barrier to these resources and the care that we want to provide them. And so, what I love is that with modern health, you have a broad spectrum of therapists, local and global, and thinking through the nuances culturally. So you're coming at it from a very compassionate way, that makes access available for sure, but also makes me feel like I'm part of a community that cares.
Wow, that's wonderful to hear. Thanks, Pat. Let's see. Do we have, looks like we have a couple more questions here. Let's see, there's a question for you, Pat. Do you see more employers being flexible about where their employees work post-pandemic?
Yes, and yes. There are going to be some that like, I want you in the office. Our culture is built in the brick and mortar, and that's how it'll be manifested, and that's where innovation happens. And I get that. There's a lot of whiteboarding and energy that happens in the hallways. But I think where majority of employees were 9 to 5, 5 days a week in an office space, what you'll see post pandemic is probably episodically going in the office. It'll be a hybrid. It'll be about 60 some odd percent of employees will come in 3 days a week and 2 days from home or wherever they want to work. And I think it's going to not be the experience you used to have, right? So clearly, as offices are opening up in the United States right now, you're needing to wear your masks, social distance. There's rules of engagement. There's way to keep the facility clean, and where you park and how you enter a room and how you exit the room. So, and you're not going to have the open lunch cafeteria where everyone's sharing food. I mean, there's going to be different protocol. And so what you were used to actually is shifting. The footprint and how many people are in the building will shift. And I think we're going to give more choice in where you work and how you work. But there is magic to have those happen chance conversations in the hallway, getting to know the people next door to you and down the hall, and having lunch with them, that I do miss. As an introvert, great being on my own sometimes, but I love smiles. I love body language. I read the body language as heavily as I read listen to the words. And so for me, I'll go in the office just for that energy. And then I love having the choice to go home when I need to or want to, just to get my focus time. So I think it'll be a hybrid.
Yeah, that's great. Let's see, are there other questions in the chat?
There was a question up, how do you recognize and assess candidates with emotional intelligence?
Hmm.
Does that mean weak or strong with Procore or in the mainstream hiring market? It could go both ways. That's an interesting question. EQ and IQ. So definitely we interview for skills and experience, and we extrapolate what that means, and try to predict future success. The EQ side for me is, can you read the room, the interviewer? Do you understand, especially as a manager, how to take the temperature of an organization, the conversation, the debate, and know when to leave the conversation going because you're discovering things, or when it's just spinning and you need to cut that conversation off and move it on. And so that emotional intelligence about the social dynamics of conversation, of debate, of the rumble, as Brene Brown would say, knowing when to be vulnerable as a leader and model behavior, that's the EQ side that I think great organizations should harness. And I think it's a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think there was a question about supporting mental health when I think one of the attendees has stated that they've had Zoom calls and meetings and roundtables, but they get really low turnout, and primarily they get feedback that people are just burned out on another Zoom meeting. So I think maybe talk a little bit about some other ways to incorporate it into the day.
Two things come to mind. One is put it into the DNA of your business. So what do I mean by that? If you already have all hands every 2 weeks or every month, a lot of companies have increased their frequency of communication to the global workforce. Weave this mental health, these conversations into those forums. Don't make it a standalone. If you can also have a leader share a brief vulnerable moment of their anxiety, their uncertainty, they talk to their therapist about how to navigate, home, children, chaos, whatever their story is. You destigmatize this, and then maybe they kick off that session. So you kind of weave it into the DNA of what you already do. So it becomes more on the forefront. And then when you have your own leaders sitting there kicking it off and being vulnerable, um, I think you'll have more uptick. Just having a therapist online or just a doctor and just say, here's your hour, may not be as compelling as this is Sam. We love Sam. Sam's going to talk about his journey, and then he's going to partner with Dr. So and so. And the two of them are going to riff on practical tips we can all have, because who doesn't want to live a healthy life? It just changes the tone.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Great advice. We have another question that says some of our employees are having major anxiety about coming back into the office, and some of our leadership does not want to take this into consideration. Any advice?
One, if it were me and I was posed that question at work, I'd ask the question from the employees, can you get data? What's holding them back? What are they anxious about? Is it safety? Is it their personal health? Is it health of their family when they go back home, or care of family and community when they go back home? Or did they move, and going back to the office means they have to go relocate back to XYZ location? So discern what is the problem that they're anxious about, because they can be solved in different ways. And then from the leadership perspective, if they don't bring hearts and minds into the journey about how work will get done, they will lose great employees. They just will. So be a little bit more compassionate, listen, and then compromise, adapt your policies where you can. For example, a lot of companies are saying we will slowly open up our offices from April through September. And by October, we envision, we're going to go back to maximum 70% capacity. So we're safe through the winter flu season. But even with that, you have choice. So if you feel uncomfortable, don't come in, just work with your manager. So giving him choice back to the employee, regardless of how open your doors are, that will help galvanize people to think, all right, I should go in, I can come in, I can take care of family, I have choice.
Yeah. 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 And I think what you mentioned about the uncertainty piece, I mean, uncertainty drives anxiety. And so find out what aspects of the coming back to work are driving anxiety, or what additional things can be shared to help reduce that uncertainty for employees. Yeah.
Nora added more. She said, all except the moving part. No one has moved. We suggested a survey, but now leadership doesn't want to do that either. So Nora, that's a challenge, right? So a lot of leaders, not a lot, I don't want to, when I've met leaders that have not wanted to survey, means they don't want to change their own behavior. No matter what the feedback they get, they're on a course. So I would just hold up a mirror depending on your role and say, here's the cost of yes. If you say yes, we're going back in the office, everyone has to come in. What is the potential cost of that yes? And to your best of your ability, get your arms around that cost. Lower engagement, higher turnover, how you're different from your competitors and talent, therefore they're going to be, courted away from you. Try to give your business case, go back to the business case to get to the leader's attention. So if they won't hear the story, won't listen the words, give them the data.
No, that's great. Okay. And I think we're closing in on time, but Pat, do you want to highlight any roles that you're hiring for Procore?
Oh, you're so sweet. We're hiring. Come join. We're hiring in HR and every function. We're growing. We're growing. We're a pre-IPO growth company in an amazing digital space for construction. So if you're interested in joining a high growth company that cares about you, the whole you, check out Procore. I know I did, and I'm happy I'm here.
Oh, fantastic. Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. As mentioned, we will send out the recording as well as the slides, and you have access to our circles as well as an email, some suggested emails and Slacks that you can support your employees and their mental health with. And thank you so much for joining us. And Pat, thank you for all the wonderful tips and wisdom shared.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
It was. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.